If you talk to veterans of previous successful Democratic presidential campaigns, and by that I primarily mean Clinton people and Obama people, they will tell you something that is true. And it informs my view of the weakness of this Democratic field for 28, which is this is the major leagues, folks. You cannot freelance. You cannot say things. You cannot be like, say, you cannot be a governor of a state who's done criminal redistricting. I say criminal in air quotes, and then criticize another state for its redistricting. It's just like you can't get away with stuff when you're running for president. Here is Pete Buttigieg, who is by many measures the most experienced, most press savvy, one of the smartest people thinking of running for president. Here's Pete Buttigieg in a relatively friendly interview with the podcast Bros, talking about part of what he said, talking about Israel.
Do you think it's time to recognize a Palestinian state?
I think that's a profound question that arouses a lot of the biggest problems that have happened with Israel's survival, Israel's right to survival in the diplomatic scene. And many of the people who have taken that step historically have done so for different reasons than what we see happening with European countries. I think we need to step back and we need to do whatever it takes to ensure that there is a real two-state solution and that no one, not even the likes of Netanyahu, can veto the international community's commitment to a two-state solution where you have Palestinians and Israelis living with safety, with security, with rights. I believe that can happen, but we have to actually show some commitment to it.
That was part of an answer which I can summarize as humana, humana, humana. Again, raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. Here's what one of those Obama veterans tweeted about that answer, the overall answer, not just that part. This is Ben Rhodes, who was Deputy National Security Advisor for President Obama. Pete is a smart guy, and I admire a lot of what he's done, but I have absolutely no idea what he thinks based on these answers. Just tell us what you believe. Again, this is part of a broader thing. Go look at, for instance, Senator, what's the senator from Arizona's name?
Mark Kelly?
Oh, Ruben Gallego.
Ruben Gallego. Go look at Ruben Gallego's relatively well-covered trip to Iowa and look at his answers. Look at even Gavin Newsom's answers. These guys are and gals are so far from the standards you need, and the press is not holding them accountable for these flabby answers. But we are here. Dan, do you agree with Ben Rhodes specifically about Pete Buttigieg and that appearance? But do you agree with the more general point that I hear from Obama and Clinton people that these folks just don't understand? They think they're hitting they're hitting double A pitching, and they think they're in the major leagues.
Yes, no, I agree. And I think we didn't play the rest of the clip of Buttigieg, but there were several questions that he got on, I'll call them controversial foreign policy topics where he tap danced around them. He did not give direct answers. And so I think by the time you got to that question, that is where the most obvious of his tap dancing. I think look, on the one hand, Donald Trump does tap dance on some question. He calls it the weave or like whatever, but on 9 out of 10 occasions, Trump is just like, full throttle, just here's exactly where I stand. There's no ambiguity. And I think that's where, for Buttigieg in that interview, he just on question after question would not kind of be straight. And I think part of the problem is it's an understanding of the modern environment. If you want to go on all these podcasts, if you do this, there is an audience of commentators waiting to pick you apart online and everywhere else. 30 years ago, there wasn't. You'd read about it in the newspaper. It might get a little play on kind of a nascent CNN that was just emerging. But now, you can't go out. And I think what they're doing is they're getting their feet wet. It's like taking swings in the batting cage. But now it's all your permanent record. People are forming their initial opinions now as they start to do this. And so I do agree with you, Mark. Nobody so far has stepped forward to me and said, I've done all my spade work behind the scenes. I've prepped these answers. I know how I want to do this. And I'm road testing the finished product, so to speak. It'll evolve as the world changes. But it's almost like they don't understand that this is all in real time. And they're just being, ground down a little.
And they think it's early and it's really not. Sean,
right. Agree.
Sean, do you see anybody in the Democratic field who actually understands now's the time to be saying what you plan to say when you run rather than shopping things and dodging and weaving the hard questions?
No, but I have to wonder, like, we haven't heard much from a guy like Wes Moore. Is he sitting back kind of going, I'm getting ready, or I don't want, but I agree with what Dan said. I mean, the idea that Buttigieg, I feel like he was winging it. And we've seen this a little with Rahm Emanuel too, where they show up and they're like, okay, guys, let's talk. I mean, I don't do a random, the easiest hit in the world without saying, hey, what are the topics? Do you have anything you want to share? Right. And I feel like these guys were just getting on the Zoom and being like, "Hey, let's go." That word salad was an insult to word salads. I felt like Kamala Harris was watching that and going, "How come he gets away with it?" Um, it really was a compilation of nothingness, and if I were another candidate, to your point, I'd look at that and say, that's the guy that you guys think, he's at zero with blacks and he can't put together a decent, soundbite on Gaza. He's getting whacked by, the pod said guy. I'm the lieutenant governor of Nebraska. I'm going to run. I mean, like, somebody's got to be thinking to themselves, I can do better.
Yeah.
I think Josh Shapiro and Gretchen Whitmer, who just continue to govern, they're staying out of this stuff, and now it's starting to look smart.
Shapiro has the same problem.
No, I did, but
It's
there's
the same
less
problem.
footage now.
They can answer they can answer the easy questions, but when
Yep.
you run for president, guess what?
Yep.
But it's also the case, and I'll paint with a broad brush here. They're not being asked by reporters who are rigorous and serious. This is not an interview with like David Broder or Karen Elliott House, or somebody's going to ask them like really tough questions. These are like they're facing nothingness, and they still
But
can't.
the thing is, it's not even just that they're facing nothingness. It's like being asked, would you like for lunch today? These are the obvious questions.
Yes, correct.
So the idea that you're not prepared, it wasn't like that was a gotcha. And it was like, can you explain how
That's
you're going
it.
to handle, the refinancing of the debt when it comes to this obscure entitlement program? It's like, dude, this is literally in the news today, every day, and you haven't prepared a concise answer on the
Yes.
most obvious things that the Democratic Party wants to talk about.
Well, and that's like
Correct.
Kamala Harris on The
Correct.
View, right? They don't have game plans going in. It's almost like their game plans. We used to talk about this with Harris. Don't make a mistake. No
Yep.
news is victory.
Totally
and
agree.
that instead of like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama would say, what is the headline that I want to drive out of this? And let me drive towards it.
Totally agree. I'll tell you this. One last thing on Israel and Gaza and Palestine. This is an incredibly tough issue right now. It's tougher than it's ever been if you're a Democrat, because all of the energy in the party is on the left, all of it. And so if you don't pander entirely to that position, you'll be destroyed. And you have to have the courage to say, I'm going to stand up to that wing of the party, even though that's where the whole energy is. Not just where the loudest and angriest people are, but it's the direction the party it continues to head. Want more great clips like that? I've got an idea. Hit the subscribe button, be part of the two-way community, never miss a clip, and you can always watch our full episodes, join them live, go to twoway.tv.